All right. Thank you everyone for being here. It's my pleasure to introduce Jason Maassen. Jason began his research career in the late 90s at VU University Amsterdam. He completed a PhD in high performance distributed computing, postdoctoral work in HPC and related fields, and joined the Netherlands eScience Center in 2012 as one of its first research software engineers. Applying his expertise to various scientific domains, including climate modeling, astrophysics, digital forensics. Over time, his focus has shifted from HPC to topics related to research, software quality, citation, fairness, and impact. And since 2017, he's been involved in projects and prototypes that led to the Research Software Directory, where he currently leads the development team and manages community and project around it as a product development lead at the eScience Center. Jason will be talking about the Research Software Directory and Federated Search. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, indeed. So Research Software Directory and the Federated Search that we've been experimenting with for the last couple of months. So before I start, a brief introduction into the Research Software Directory for those of you who don't know it. It's an open source online platform designed to collect information that sort of surrounds research software. And our goal is to sort of show the impact and the role that research software has on research. And we do so by actually showing research in combination with the related research outputs, with related people collaborating on the software, organizations, etc., etc. And the way in which the RSD works is that if you want to register your software on the RSD, you first need a user account, and then you need to provide a bit of basic information about your software, which is basically the software name, a short description, and some relevant links and persistent identifiers, such as a GitHub URL, for example, or a DOI of Zenodo, where you actually archive your software. And then based on this information, the RSD will semi-automatically or automatically sometimes start harvesting information from many different sources. To sort of enrich the data we have about the software. So we get development information from GitHub or GitLab. We get information like downloads from things like PyPy or cron or NPM. We get information on citations from OpenAlex, etc., etc. And then using this information, the RSD creates software pages, which sort of show this information in a structured manner and which is aimed at humans reading it, basically. But we also have various APIs where this information can be shared with the open science ecosystem. And just to show a few examples of those, so we have a REST API, which allows you to directly peek into our database, essentially get all the information we have available. But we also have a CodeMeta API, we have an OAI PMH API, and through all of these different APIs, the information we gather about software is available to other services. And just to show you an example of one of these services using information from the RSD, there's a Dutch research portal, which is provided by OpenAir, which collects all the research output in the Netherlands, essentially, from many different sources. And the RSD is one of these sources specifically for research software, but it also gets data from all of the CRIS systems that universities are using. We don't develop the RSD on our own. We have been working with people from Helmholtz for the last 2 or 3 years already. And the Helmholtz organization in Germany also hosts their own RSD. So if you go to researchsoftwaredirectory.org, this is the RSD that we are hosting. This one is open to everyone, while the one at Helmholtz.software is being hosted by Helmholtz and is only used by Helmholtz organizations. We are also involved in the development of a custom RSD for climate researchers in the Netherlands. And Helmholtz is also involved in the NFDI.software project, where the RSD is being used as sort of a software marketplace for all software in Germany, all research software that developed in Germany. Now, and of course, if you have multiple RSD instances available, it's sort of an obvious question to ask, hey, can we actually share information between these instances somehow? And do some sort of federation so that if you search for software in one of the RSDs, that you could also find it in one of the others. So this was sort of triggered by a question from the NFDI.software project. And therefore, at the end of last year, we did a small project together with people from Helmholtz to see if we could implement this somehow. Now, we considered various models for doing this, and I'll just briefly run you through the different models we considered, and also sort of explain why we decided on the model that we decided on in the end. So the first approach that we considered is just having a search portal, right? So every RSD or every other registry could have a search interface, and you have some global search portal where if you type a query, this query is forwarded to all of the different registries, and you get the result back, and you somehow arrange the results and show this to the user. Now, the nice thing about this, it's a very simple approach. The downside is that there's no sort of way, if you first go to this portal, there's no overview and there's no way in which you can actually see what software is there. You cannot filter it. You really have to start with a query. And if you get results back from the different systems, then merging your results can be complicated, especially if you have things like pagination involved, right? So how do you actually figure out what the right order of the results should be? Potentially, you have performance issues if one of these registries is slow. And you also have a single point of entry, which you could see as a positive thing. But actually, for NFDI.software, they wanted to have the model where people could actually use their local environment to do their searching and get results from others. So this was seen as a negative thing for them. So the next thing we considered is doing a peer-to-peer search, where you can have multiple directories actually connected to each other, and you can search in any one of those and get results from the others also. This gets rid of the problem that you have the single point of entry, but of course the rest is essentially the same. So you have the same issues that you would have with the search portal. We also considered building an aggregator where you collect information from all the different registries in one place. The nice thing about this is that it allows you to sort of provide an overview and do filtering on the aggregated results. The performance is potentially better, but again, you had this single point of entry, which I didn't want to have. So in the end, we decided to go with sort of a peer-to-peer approach to aggregation, where every directory can actually connect to any other directory, get results from the software that's stored there, and show these results combined with the software that's available locally. And then you have the best of all worlds, basically. Now, if you look at the information that we actually need to share between these directories, that's quite limited. So if you go to the research software directory and go to the software overview, what you see then is that you have all of these different tiles, which provide the basic information about the software, and you have this interface where you can search and you can filter and sort and do all kinds of things to find the software that you need. But if you look at the actual amount of information on one of these tiles, it's very limited. It's essentially just the name of the software, a short description, some information on how many associated papers there are with this software, how many people have contributed, some keywords, and some information on programming models and licensing that you can use for filtering. And the same information is also accessible through our REST API, right? So essentially, if you go to the front end of the research software directory, what it does is it talks to the backend. It through the REST API gets all of this information in the form of JSON objects and presents them in a nice way. But this information is also accessible directly in a machine readable manner. And that meant that was very easy for us to actually connect the different RSDs together, because what we could do is simply build a harvester that was capable of connecting to remote RSDs and use the existing REST API to retrieve the basic information from the other remote RSD and combine this with the software that's available here. And you see an example here. I also have a demo. If I have time, I'll briefly show it, where you have results coming from both the research software directory that the eScience Center is hosting and the one that Helmholtz is hosting. And essentially, the only thing we're doing is showing these tiles, allowing the filtering and the searching. And if you actually click on one of these tiles, it will be forwarded to the research software directory where the software is actually described. Now, this isn't the only thing we've been trying for federated search. We've also been combining the research software directory with other data sources, and particularly the data coming from 40U, which is the collaboration of the 4 technical universities in the Netherlands. They have their own archive where they store all kinds of data, but also archived copies of software. And we have connected our platforms to basically harvest the software information they archive and also show this on the research software directory. And what's slightly different is that with this approach, what we're trying to do is not just do the searching and the filtering, which we do if we connect multiple RSDs, but instead we really want to sort of harvest the information that they have about software and create software pages on the RSD, which are then enriched automatically with all the information we can get from the different sources. So that's a slightly more advanced case. To do so, we've worked together with 40U to implement this, and what they basically did is they provided a CodeMeta API endpoint on their service that we can use to sort of retrieve the latest software entries that they have in their system. And you see an example here. And then basically what we do is we use that information as a starting point. So where normally a person would enter the initial basic information about software, we now use the basic information coming from this JSON object, and then insert this into the entire system, which then starts harvesting information from the different from the other sources that we have available. Now this works okay-ish. We do have some issues. So if you really look at the results, I think they have more than 500 entries archived in their platform, and if you switch on this harvesting, it will look something like this. But we did run into some problems that we're still trying to resolve. So one of the things that we saw is that the data quality of the entries varies a lot, right? So sometimes there's a lot of information for an entry, sometimes there's hardly any information for an entry. One of the big problems we ran into is that there's a difference between sort of the one-off scripts that people archive simply because it goes with a data set and it goes with a paper, but it's not really software, right? It is, of course, software in the sense that it's a Python script, but it's basically written to be used once, and that's pretty much it. Versus the real software, which is software that's being developed, that has a community, that has multiple versions, is used in multiple papers, etc. And both of them are in the archive, and sort of seeing the difference between the two is difficult at the moment. And we're sort of trying to figure out how to do this automatically. Often there's also missing information. So sometimes you don't have things like a GitHub URL, for example, but there's just a zip file which is being archived, and that's it. Sometimes there are no proper descriptions, no reference papers, no logos, those kind of things. And if you run into this, you get really boring research software directory pages because there's essentially nothing to show for this software. So the ways in which we're trying to solve this at the moment is that first of all, we're trying to automatically see the difference between this one-off script, which is being archived, and actual software. Because if it's just a one-off script, then instead of really making a full-blown RSD page, we could also just show it in the search interface, and whenever somebody clicks it, you get forwarded to the original 40U page instead of the RSD page. And if there's information missing, like proper descriptions, for example, or reference papers, one of the things we're looking at is trying to look at the GitHub or the GitLab repositories, if they are available, and seeing if we can actually harvest more information from, for example, the README Markdown file. And SOMAF is one of the tools that's doing that, so we're considering using that to see if we can actually get more information about the software. So in conclusion, doing the federated search between research software directories was actually quite simple to implement because we need limited information to implement this, and the existing endpoints could simply be used to do this. The other approach we did with 40U, which is sort of importing software and then enriching it, is actually much more difficult because the data we need as a starting point is not always available. There are lots of data quality issues. And yeah, one of the things we could do there is sort of fall back to the search and forward approach that we also used in the federated search. An interesting issue that we also ran into with combining the software in various software directories is that sometimes you have software which is registered in multiple directories. So we have tools in our research software directory that is also in the Helmholtz copy. And then these pages are slightly different. So one of the interesting questions is, okay, what happens if you actually find the software in multiple places? So, and that's it from my side.
Great,
Any
thank you,
questions?
Jason. We do have some questions. Uh,
Yes.
Anna, do you want to ask your questions that you placed in chat first?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. Thank you. This is amazing. I would actually, so I represent ADSIX, and we are handling the federated search issue and specifically for software as well. And we're very interested in learning from you on your federated search. So maybe maybe I could schedule a separate call for this or something. But on
Yeah.
this particular thing, so I love how you organize research software directory. I love how you organize the metadata. I'm just wondering, so for the keywords, is there control vocabulary that you all use? And if there isn't, how do you mitigate that in the federated search?
That's a very good question, actually. So initially, the keywords vocabulary wasn't controlled, which leads to a huge mess, basically, because you have lots of issues where you have typos or slightly different capitalization or those kind of things. We try to sort of curate this a bit ourselves in the sense that we have also, as an RSD admin, an overview of all the keywords, and you can quite easily see that things are doubled or slightly different spellings, those kind of things. What we've recently added is also the concept of categories, which is a controlled vocabulary. And then you really have sort of a hierarchy that says that you have certain keywords that can be used. This actually also came from Helmholtz, where they have this quite strict categorization of projects and the names that go with it, had a certain classes of research that they're doing. And for each and every software entry that they have, it has to fit in one of these boxes. So that's why we implemented this. And we're also using this for a new feature which we have, which is sort of a community view on software that you can, next to organizations, you can also have communities that have collections of software. And then one of these communities can have its own categories, so this own vocabulary that must be used to actually describe the software. And then there's also a curator for the community in there, in the loop, that can decide whether or not the software is accepted in the community. So, but these are all quite new features, so we're still testing them, and I expect them to go live later this year. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Is there a way to tap into those control vocabularies and the categories and the specific term? Like look at what you're using and maybe try to adapt something for our system as well.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to discuss this further. I think one of the big problems we've been having is that there's no single vocabulary that makes sense for everyone, right? So it's really community specific. And then, yeah, the best way would be that if there is a vocabulary available somewhere, that you can somehow import this into the RSD and it understands this and connects it to a community. But this is something we still need to do. So I think, yeah, if you have good examples of controlled vocabularies, I would be happy to discuss this further and see how we can integrate it.
Would love to, yeah, and I do, but as long as context is provided, I don't think it's critical to have one common vocabulary for everyone. It's not practical really. But if
Indeed, yeah.
If there are multiple vocabularies, as long as it's controlled and there is a context, I think it should be usable.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Great, makes sense.
Hey, Jason. Thank you so much for this great presentation. I really enjoyed it, especially since I'm very into the topic of research software, registries and marketplace, etc. Even if some people don't like the term marketplace, whatever. But yes, I got some question regarding the RSD. Typically, I know some people in Germany, Christian Maassen from in Potsdam.
Yes.
Yes, so you know him.
Yeah, I work with him daily, basically. So he's basically leading the RSD team at Helmholtz. So yeah.
All right. Okay. It's very clear. So, how you envision the people that would adopt RSD as a solution? You know what I mean? Typically, if you have dozen and dozen of university deploying RSD instances, are you about to typically when a user want to request a search query to find software in his domain? Is he about to request multiple REST API? How the solution is scalable? That's a bit my concern I can have on the architecture, or what I understood of the architecture, how it's working. But it was one of my concern. And do you plan to? That's really a question and not a reproach when I say that. Do you really plan to just keep this registries vision purely metadata focused, or do you think implementing things regarding the source code discovery or any other functionalities that can help scientists at developing software? So that's my bunch of questions I can have for you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for your question. Yeah, these are good questions indeed. So what's interesting is that when we started with this in 2018, our first prototypes of the Research Software Directory were really designed to be a single directory for a single organization. And we had, as an eScience center, we had our own directory, and there was lots of interest from other organizations. And then we basically said, well, okay, that's easy. You just take the source code and you host your own. And it turned out that for many organizations, this was too hard, right? Then you need the infrastructure, you need the people that can actually manage one of these things. So that's why in 21 we actually decided, okay, we should offer this thing as a service instead, so that multiple organizations can connect to it. That's also the moment when Helmut joined the effort. And then, of course, the first thing they said is, yeah, great idea, but we want our own RSD instead of joining yours. So we had two again. But what you do see is that the Research Software Directory that we are hosting at the moment is one that has something in the order of 20, 25 organizations using it, and a lot of sort of individual researchers from, well, worldwide essentially. And the one that's being hosted at Helmholtz also has something like 18 different organizations using it. So what is sort of happening is that we're getting this model where you have, a number of big research software directories, which multiple organizations using it, and then these are the ones you're trying to connect together. So that's sort of where the scalability is coming from, sort of, I think. In general, when I'm talking to organizations that want to join the effort, I try to convince them indeed to essentially join our RSD, and sort of we can also help with adding new features that they need. But sometimes indeed they want to have their own, because they represent a very large community, like the climate modeling community, for example, and they have slightly different requirements compared to the others. So I do expect the number of RSDs to slowly grow, but hopefully it won't be hundreds of them, because then indeed we would have scalability issues potentially. Related to the recommender systems, I think indeed it's a very good idea. I think in the NFDI.software, there's also this Betty's research engine, I think is one of the sub-projects that they have there, which is more like a recommender system than a registry. One of the original ideas of the Research Software Directory was to have software pages that would allow people to find software, and by providing the context, you could more easily understand what the software was used for, compared to GitHub README pages, for example, which tend to focus on how you install stuff and those kind of things, and not explain what role the software had played. But I do think we could improve this further by indeed using recommender systems, and because we collect a lot of information also with related publications, related data sets, related organizations, I think we have a very good basis for feeding a recommender system and saying, hey, if you are coming from climate modeling and you're looking for a certain type of research to be done, you should look at these tools because they do similar things to what you are doing. But it's not something we have at the moment.
All right. I mean, I was asking because, of course, that's my PhD topic, and I'm about to work on that in the next 3 years. So I talked about it with Christian Maassen, and I was wondering if there are other things like that in the RSD team in Netherlands, if people are also starting to have this kind of work, to initiate this kind of work, and so what are the coordination and things that we can, technologies that we could share potentially in the future. But it was more to understand if there are, beyond that, other features to help developers. It can be what I said about source code, but it can be about, in general, recommender system on metadata, or I don't know, other features too.
So So to be honest, I'm not aware of anyone doing recommender systems. There are a couple of people that are looking at research graphs, right? So that they're taking data from the research software directory and combining this with all kinds of other data they have on research activities and outputs, and trying to build graphs and see connections and those kind of things. But real recommender systems, I don't know. No, I don't think I've seen that anywhere yet. So I think it's a good PhD topic.
Yeah, might be a cool downstream use case when
indeed,
we have good metadata, consistent metadata.
Yeah.
We have one last question from Rebecca, and let's please make it quick so we can get to the other.
I will try. But hi, Jason. Thanks for the presentation. Looking at the Research Software Directory website, there's a small number of software packages there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could demonstrate capability by challenging the group to do a few things. One might be to make one step forward by using the repositories, say, starting on GitHub that have CodeMeta signs, pulling those in and doing a demonstration with that, and even taking it a step farther and going to the DataCite API and pulling records that are labeled as software and demonstrate federated search with that, because then you can demonstrate the power of your system, the capability of your system, and you might get someone like Google interested in adapting this kind of thing into a bigger system, and then potentially attract more interested entities.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. So we've been contemplating on using something like Sommer, for example, to sort of bootstrap this whole process and automatically finding research software and creating RSD pages automatically. But it's one of these things which are on like the to-do list, and if we ever have time, we'll do it. And of course, you never have time. So, but I do think it's a very good idea to see if we can sort of automate this further, because one of the things I have noticed, and it's also something we're trying to do in the research software directory, is that if you can automate all of this, it's much easier for people to use it and adopt it. And if you expect them to sort of maintain pages and do a lot of work while you're adding papers manually, that's not going to work. It's just too much work. And so trying to curate or add content automatically and curate it automatically somehow, I think that's definitely the way to go. But we're not there yet. So yeah.
All right, thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Jason. This is a fantastic introduction to the tool, and I look forward to seeing how it develops.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me stop sharing.